is Maya Rockymore. I'm President and CEO of Global Policy Solutions. I would like to join the others in congratulating Heidi Hartman and her team at IWPR for another excellent report on Social Security. The report clearly shows that the value of Social Security is incredibly important for all people in society, but it really shows that it's important for vulnerable populations. And I would argue that the fact that we've seen an increasing reliance over the past 10 years, I think is going to be a harbinger of the future as well. In fact, I think IWPR can hold this conference in another 10 and 20 years, and the title is going to still be the same, that Social Security reliance is increasing. And for communities of color, I think that this is going to be incredibly true, and this is why. We're facing an economic crisis in this country. As you all know, we had the financial crisis on top of a recession. But for people of color, the devastation has been horrendous. This is a population that already was suffering from disparities in assets and income prior to the financial crisis. We know that from data, from the consumer finance data that's put out by the Federal Reserve Board, that in the year 2007, the last time it was released, the wealth data for every $1 of wealth for white families, Latino families had 12 cents, and African American families only had a dime. Now that was data before the crisis. We know that since the crisis, that these communities have been especially devastated, particularly on the housing front. They were more likely to receive those types of loans that were exploding and unaffordable. We also know that these communities have been experiencing a crisis with regards to pension coverage and 401k coverage. Certainly we know that on the public pension side, as well as the private pension side, we have a crisis. So for example, DEMOS put out a recent report that shows from 1979 to 2006, black private sector workers saw their pension coverage decline from 45.8% to 37.5%. Latino workers saw their private pension coverage decline from 38.2% to 22.6%. Now for white workers, there was also a decline of roughly 3.7%, but it was from 52.2% to 48.5%. Overall, we know that this is going to have severe significance for populations of color in the future, not only today's retirees, but in the future. The Senior Financial Stability Index that DEMOS puts out actually shows that it looks at housing expenses, healthcare expenses, home equity, assets, and household budget. They found that 91% of both African American and Latino seniors face financial vulnerability. That means that 9 out of 10 don't have significant economic security to sustain themselves through their projected lives. Now, that is the picture, certainly without Social Security. Social Security is incredibly important, as IWPR's report shows, for these populations. In fact, there is a great chart in the IWPR report that shows the sources of income for older adults at various ages in their older adult experience. And certainly we see that at the age of full retirement, roughly 65, 66, that Social Security is an incredibly important source of income for not only African Americans and Hispanics, but also for whites. And of course that reliance increases as they age. But we also see something startling. We see that clearly the asset gap, that white women in particular have a higher reliance, or they have more income from assets at age 65 than do black or Hispanics. In fact, 59% of white women also have, in addition to Social Security, income from assets, compared to only 27% of African American women and only 27% of Latina women. And of course, the other sources of income, pensions, also there's a disparity, with white women earning 27% from pensions compared to only 15% for Latina women. This data actually reflects other data that shows that there's a crisis for women of color, particularly in terms of asset building. And it's incredibly important to consider assets in addition to Social Security, because we know that Social Security income is not enough. That if we want to see those figures for poverty go down for Black and Latino families, we actually have to look at, in addition to strengthening Social Security, we have to also look at asset building in these populations so that they have more financial protection as they age. A recent report that was actually released by Mariko Chain with the Insight Center for Community Economic Development found that almost half of single African American and Latino women have zero or negative wealth, and that single African American and Hispanic women have a median wealth of $100 and $120 respectively, compared to a median wealth indicator for single white women of $41,500. 57% of single white women own homes, 33% of single Black women own homes, and only 28% of Latina women own homes. So what's the point? The point is these figures that I'm sharing with you today are for that population that's under the age of retirement, under the age of 62. So we know that wealth disparities are huge in this population. We know that the economic crisis has hit this population hard. We know that from the unemployment data. We know that from the wealth disparity data, etc. And guess what? These populations are also increasing in numbers. So the census data shows us that by the year 2041, the nation will become majority minority, meaning that these populations will become the majority of the U.S. population. And there's other census data that projects, shows that when they will become a majority of the older adult population. And so with that, Social Security is going to continue to be vitally important for the income security of all Americans, but particularly people of color, well into the future. And we need to do everything that we can to protect and strengthen this program for today's generation and for future generations. Now, I say that in the context of a larger conversation that's taking place with regards to budget deficits and the American debt. And unfortunately, we've seen a conversation over the last year or so that's been bubbling up where people have tried to lump Social Security in as a cause of the current deficits. And that is dangerous because it buys into a frame that seeks to radically undermine the viability of the program and justify significant cuts. The IWPR report and other data shows that this program, we cannot afford to have this program cut. And we also know that those frames, the frame in terms of Social Security actually causing deficits, is actually inaccurate. So with that, I am very pleased to join with Heidi and other colleagues to push back against that frame, to take Social Security where it belongs, which is not in that conversation, and to talk about how do we actually grow and build Social Security for the future. And I would like to actually associate myself with the remarks of Virginia Reno before about the importance of actually looking at revenue raisers for Social Security because I think that that is going to be a significant part of the future of the program. Thank you.